at the grocery store as they're saving up for that super expensive plane ticket or a new pair of shoes from their favorite luxury brand, says Sonia Lipinski of Alex Partners. They just did a footwear survey. Lipinski says shoppers are still buying expensive shoes, but fewer pairs.
So 30 to 40% of consumers are saying they want to buy the brands that they want. They're just not going to buy as many pairs of shoes as they had in years past.
Dan North is senior economist at Allianz Trade North America. He says this pattern of consumer spending will continue as long as people feel secure in their jobs.
It's a no hire, no fire situation, that's for sure. But if you look at the unemployment rate and the amount of jobs created every month, this is what's helping people feel secure.
North says if the job market holds up, the consumer will too. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer for Marketplace.
Let's do the numbers. The FTSE in London is down 0.2%. Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ futures are mixed, with the Dow future up 135 points. That's about 0.3%. And the NASDAQ future down 0.6%. The 10-year Treasury yield is up at 4.57%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab. At Schwab, investors get choices ranging from self-directed investing to full-service wealth management all in one place. Learn more at schwab.com. And by Mercury, business banking and financial software to help entrepreneurs send money, create invoices, pay bills, and more. Learn more at mercury.com.
The final game of the 2026 FIFA Men's World Cup will be played this Sunday in New Jersey. Spain and Argentina will face each other to determine the champion. But for some of the other 46 teams who failed to make it this far, they're facing more than just disappointed fans back home. World Cup losses can come at political and financial costs for some national soccer clubs. Catherine Kim is an assistant editor for Politico and wrote about this for the Politico Forecast newsletter. Catherine, welcome.
Good morning.
You start your piece with a taste of what happens when a team underperforms in the World Cup. Can you share more about what we saw from different teams?
Yeah, I think the one that I had highlighted and is definitely the most controversial is South Korea's crash out. They didn't even make it to the knockout rounds. It was one of their poorest performances ever. And that actually led to the president calling for a special audit on the Korea Football Association, KFA, as well as the hiring of the coach, who there's already been a lot of controversy over whether he was hired on improper grounds. What started with that president's request for an audit has now kind of snowballed into a series of National Assembly hearings. There's been the Seoul Metropolitan Police is conducting a criminal investigation. The coach has resigned. The Korea Football Association's president is leaving as well. And so there have been all these political consequences to their loss.
I think a lot of people can relate to being upset that your team has lost, but to outsiders, this may seem like a bit of overkill for there to be all of these investigations and for the government to be involved in this. Why is there such an intense reaction?
What is on the line here is that KFA, about 30% of his funds come from public funds. It's the reason why the president is so interested in seeing whether or not it has gone through proper procedure. Transparency is very important to the people of Korea. It's been a pillar to this specific president's presidency, and that had become a huge question mark, the transparency behind KFA and hiring its coach.
What do we know about how some of the other teams that have had to go home empty-handed are being received and any financial consequences for them?
Uruguay is the first that comes to mind. There has been federation turmoil and public fallout. Famously, the federation canceled the team's charter flight home, so it forced the players to come back home on commercial flights as a means of embarrassment and punishment. And Croatia, their manager left and they've hired someone new to rebuild the team. In Saudi Arabia, the Football Federation's president has resigned and they have also acknowledged the need for sweeping changes.
You know, we should also note that the U.S. men's national team did lose in the round of 16 against Belgium, but there's still a pretty significant payday that comes out of that anyway, right?
Just by advancing to the round of 16, you add $15 million in performance money. And then it's a 20-80 agreement where the U.S. soccer keeps 20 and the remainder goes to the players. And I think what's worth noting and what has received a lot of headlines is that it's split equally between the men's World Cup players and the women team as well. So that kind of is an equal payday for both.
Catherine Kim is an assistant editor at Politico magazine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And in New York, I'm Kimberly Adams with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
WNYC is supported by Make Inspire's makerspaces for kids offering STEM summer camp and after-school programs for ages 5 to 15 in New York City, Westchester, and Fairfield, featuring 3D printing, coding, and more. MakeInspires.com.
WNYC has a strong and reliable base of support all year long, thanks to our monthly sustaining donors. If you are a WNYC sustainer and you've received a new credit card recently, please update your information. Or even better, use your checking account so you never have to worry about new cards again. Give us a call at 888-376-WNYC or make your update online at wnyc.org/update.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM New York.
Good morning. The continuing war with Iran means big oil companies are collecting a lot of extra revenue right now.
If things don't resolve quickly, we're looking at potentially $250 billion, not in profit, but in excess profit.
I'm Michael Hill. It's Morning Edition from NPR and WNYC in New York. The Trump administration wants to put the current president's face on a $1 coin, despite rules against it. The U.S. Defense Secretary says members of the military older than 30 should be screened for low testosterone. And a mid-season baseball check-in with some Mets and Yankees diehards. It's Thursday, July 16th. The news is next.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The United States has expanded its strikes on Iran, hitting targets farther north and firing on a ship accused of trying to breach the U.S. naval blockade. Tehran retaliated before dawn today with missile and drone attacks aimed at Bahrain, Jordan, and Kuwait. Israel says its military will continue to occupy areas in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza. NPR's Emily Fang reports from Tel Aviv.
In a Thursday statement from his office, Israel's defense minister Israel Katz said he told U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth that Israel, quote, never asked the United States to defend our borders for us, and he said Israel would maintain a security presence in Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza. Katz's statement followed reports from media outlet Axios this week that President Trump had called Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and urged him to remove Israeli troops from territory seized in Syria and Lebanon. Netanyahu has said he will travel to the U.S. next week to attend the late Senator Lindsey Graham's funeral, but the White House has not confirmed a meeting with him. The White House has invited Lebanon's president, however, following U.S. brokered talks in Italy between Lebanon and Israel, which ended on Wednesday. Emily Fang, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
President Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence faced a tough round of questioning on Capitol Hill yesterday. During his confirmation hearing, Jay Clayton was repeatedly pressed over Trump's repeated false claims of widespread election fraud in 2020. NPR's Greg Myrie reports.
Democrats on the Senate Intelligence Committee repeatedly asked Clayton straight up who won the 2020 election. And so after several go-rounds with senators along these lines, the tone escalated as Georgia Democrat Jon Ossoff kept pressing Clayton.
Who won the 2020 election?
Like I said, I'm not going to get into that with you.
But you do have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee.
Is anything that I just said not honest or forthright?
Yes, you're not being honest or forthright. Who won the 2020 election?
I think I've answered the question.
NPR's Greg Myrie. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says record-setting rainfall is expected in many parts of south-central Texas over the next several days. Blaise Gainey from the Texas Newsroom reports.
Abbott opened Wednesday's presser telling people that the weather event has been categorized as life-threatening catastrophic floods. This comes a little over a year after the deadly floods in Hill Country that led to the death of more than 130 people. Abbott says this storm is expected to produce more rain than that.
The 4th of July floods last year had rainfall of 20.29 inches. The expected rainfall during this rainstorm is expected to be more than 30 inches.
So far, 75 people have been rescued, mostly from stranded motorists. I'm Blaise Gainey in Austin.
This is NPR.
On WNYC in New York, upper 70s with some clouds. It's 4 minutes after 7. Good morning, I'm Michael Hill. New data show a summer prep program meant to improve diversity at the city's specialized high schools is itself lacking in diversity. WNYC's Jessica Gould explains.
The summer boot camp, called Discovery, offers a chance at admission for disadvantaged students who scored just below the cutoff for specialized schools. Under the de Blasio administration, the city increased the number of seats available through the prep program to increase diversity. But out of nearly 800 offers to the summer program, only a quarter went to Black and Latino students. Black and Latino students make up more than 60% of the overall student body. New data showing only 3 Black students got into Stuyvesant this year has renewed calls to reform the admissions process. Mayor Mamdani says he wants to improve education at all public schools, starting at the earliest grades, to level the playing field.
Governor Kathy Hochul says she has mixed feelings about making daylight saving time permanent. WNYC's Jimmy Vielkind reports it's a move that could put her at odds with a key constituency.
Who knew changing clocks could be political? The U.S. House just voted to make daylight savings time permanent, allowing for more daylight in evening hours during the winter. Governor Hochul told Fox 5's Good Day New York that she's still thinking about whether she supports that change.
Yes or no? Yes or no? I don't know. I got to think this out because I don't want it darker longer, but I also love waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and it's bright out.
One group that opposes the change, Orthodox Jews. They say the end of daylight savings time would push the start of morning prayers past 9 o'clock during winter, making it difficult to pray and make it to work.
New York City's largest single source of power will be offline for most of July. The brand new transmission lines bringing hydropower to the city from Quebec shut down early or nearly 2 weeks ago. The Canadian power company Hydro-Quebec says it will take another 2 weeks to replace a damaged section of underground cable. This is the second time the power line has failed. The city is experiencing its second heat wave right now in a month. The city will need to rely on fossil fuels to meet peak demand without the clean power from Canada. Delays on downtown number 4, 5, and 6 train, as well as uptown Q trains. A disabled tractor trailer on the Cross Bronx Expressway near Weeks Avenue slowing down northbound traffic. Alternate side parking and the meters are in effect. Upper 70s with clouds, patchy smoke, mostly cloudy, sunshine, a high near 92 with strong winds.
Support for NPR comes from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, investing in creative thinkers and problem solvers who help people, communities, and the planet flourish. More information is available at hewlett.org.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, ICE traffic stops are on again per President Trump's order, just a day after the government said they'd be suspended following the killing of a motorist in Maine. What can and what should happen next? Also, when is it good to get genetic testing for one potential disease when you might get results about others that you can't do anything about? The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Leila Fadel in Washington, D.C.
And I'm Martinez in Los Angeles, California. President Trump's former defense lawyer defended himself on Capitol Hill Wednesday. Todd Blanche, Trump's pick for attorney general, portrayed himself as independent from the president in a contentious confirmation hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee.
In a few minutes, we'll hear from one of the Democrats who questioned Blanche, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. But first, some context. Blanche needs nearly unanimous support from Republicans on the committee to get confirmed, and it's not yet clear he has that. Lawmakers honed in on Blanche's close ties to the president and whether he would serve Trump or the American people.
NPR's Carrie Johnson has been following the hearing. Carrie, no shortage of controversy at the DOJ over the past year and a half, and Todd Blanche has really been at the center of it. How did that come up in the hearing?
So lawmakers got a chance to ask Blanche about a lot of problems. He got questions about prosecutions against the president's political foes, about how DOJ botched the release of files about convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and about a nearly $2 billion slush fund the administration tried to set up to pay alleged victims of weaponization. That includes people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th.
How did Todd Blanche respond?
Well, Todd Blanche basically said he's a creature of the Justice Department. He's worked there as an intern, a paralegal, and a prosecutor. But Todd Blanche has really been dogged by questions about his relationship with President Trump. Blanche, of course, worked as Trump's personal lawyer for a couple years. And Democrats say he's still serving Donald Trump instead of the Constitution. Then, under questioning, Blanche seemed to make a slip of the tongue. Here he is being questioned by Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana.
Are you and President Trump friends?
I'm his lawyer, was his lawyer, and now I'm the Deputy Attorney General.
Blanche went on to say he's not a yes man and that his time defending Trump should not define his long career.
So, Carrie, Democrats on the panel are trying to make the case against Blanche. How do they try to do that?
Some of these senators actually worked inside the Justice Department earlier in their careers, so these issues are personal to them in a way. Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island used to be a U.S. attorney. Whitehouse talked about how DOJ has lost stature with judges and juries over the past year.
Between judges appointed by every president harshly criticizing the department's work in your tenure, grand juries rejecting indictments, judicial findings of outright misconduct, this seems to be the most troubled Department of Justice in history.
Todd Blanche says on his watch, DOJ has done a lot to prosecute violent crime and keep Americans safe.
So here's a wrinkle now, because after the death of Senator Lindsey Graham over the weekend, the Judiciary Committee is very closely divided now. So how do Todd Blanche's prospects look?
That's true. There's one more day of hearings today that are going to feature witnesses arguing for and against Blanche's nomination. But safe to say, most of the Republicans on the panel seemed inclined to support him. Senator John Cornyn of Texas is going to be critical for now. Cornyn says he's undecided. Cornyn is worried about DOJ trying to resurrect that slush fund for January 6 rioters, which would use taxpayer dollars. And he's worried about the broad grant of immunity the DOJ gave Trump and two of his sons for any past tax audits. This week, a judge in Florida blasted the Justice Department's approach there. The judge wrote DOJ officials abdicated responsibility to zealously defend the interests of the U.S. in a sham deal that benefited Trump.
That's NPR's Carrie Johnson. Carrie, thank you.
Thank you.
Here to give us his view of Todd Blanche's confirmation hearings is Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. He's a Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he joins me now. Good morning, Senator Booker. Booker, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
At the end of your line of questioning in Wednesday's hearing, you said that Todd Blanche, quote, should not be confirmed for this job. Why?
Well, you hear people of good faith on both sides of the aisle call out the sort of outrages of his short tenure, from conservatives like Bill Kristol talking about his handling of the Epstein files, where he went and directly met with Ghislaine Maxwell in prison and then left, downgraded her to a prison camp, the least restrictive possible, where sex offenders are never sent, against BOP, Bureau of Prisons policies, but had no information that led to a new conviction, new investigations, and then violated the privacy rights and really subjected re-traumatization to the victims, because when he finally released Epstein files, he redacted the powerful men's information, but put out personal information, phone numbers, addresses, even images of many of the women who were the survivors of that violence. It's issues like that that have outraged people on both sides of the aisle. using his office to go after Donald Trump's perceived enemies, like Jim Comey for putting seashells in the sand in shapes. All of these things are painting a picture of somebody that is not pursuing justice, but is using the justice system as a shield to protect Donald Trump and as a sword to go after his enemies.
You mentioned his handling of the Epstein files quite a bit. That's going to be the subject of some of today's confirmation hearing as it continues, including an Epstein survivor who will be an outside witness. What do you hope to learn?
Well, I think that the testimony of these women is really so courageous and very profound and damning. You know, we already know that they had strategic meetings where they pulled together people in the Situation Room to figure out how to protect Donald Trump from this, all while trampling on the rights of the courageous women who came forward. So this is just very blatant, where he violated a bipartisan law, both on its timeline and in its substance, and really caused a lot of damage. This is something alone that would be career-ending for someone in a position like this, but it's just indicative of the way he's conducted himself while he's been in that office.
You talked about concerns on both sides of the aisle. Blanche needs nearly unanimous Republican support to get confirmed. Senator John Cornyn has said he's undecided. What have your Republican colleagues told you about their confidence in Blanche and what they plan to do?
I think it is very concerning to them when you see the kind of unprecedented opposition coming forward. You saw a huge group, over 1,000 DOJ alumni appointed by Republicans and Democrats, career folks, coming out with very substantive condemnations of his conduct in that office. And I think this concerns my colleagues. I've heard in private conversations.
But being concerned is not always the same thing as voting with that concern, as we've seen in the past. So
time and time again.
What are you hearing in the sense of actual brass tacks here? Are they going to vote for his confirmation?
Let's be clear. I've seen Susan Collins express concerns about a Supreme Court justice and their preservation of Roe v. Wade. They still voted for them. I've seen Cassidy concerned about Bobby Kennedy's upholding the highest standards of protecting public health. He voted for them anyway. Then I hear their regrets for their votes. So again, all of us have been burned by people saying one thing and then voting the other way. Obviously, my expectations are low, but I will always be a prisoner of hope. And many times that hope in history has shown that people will vote their conscience in the end. We do not know how this is going to come out, but we need to keep pressing the case in the most substantive way possible and hope they do the right thing.
And really quickly, Blanche his independence has been of concern to you and your colleagues. He told Senator John Cornyn that the $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund Trump sought to create is, quote, dead. But he also said the settlement agreement that created it is, quote, an enforceable document. Do you think it's clear whether or not that fund can be brought back?
No, it's not clear. And it's not just the fund itself. Remember, perhaps the big sweetheart part of this is that they get immunity for any kind of laws they've broken in their taxes. So this is a big gift to Donald Trump, whether it's a slush fund or that immunity, and it should concern us all.
Cory Booker is a Democratic senator from New Jersey and a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We did invite Republicans on the committee to appear on the program. Those invitations remain open.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is worried the military doesn't have enough testosterone. On Wednesday, he announced a plan to begin screening service members to make sure they have adequate levels. NPR's Will Stone has more on the plan.
In Hegseth's view, testosterone is a matter of national security and wartime readiness.
This initiative, it's not about artificial enhancement.
That's the secretary in a video posted on social media yesterday.
It's about restoring and optimizing your natural capabilities, protecting your longevity, and ensuring you have the biological foundation required to sustain the fight.
According to Hegseth, service members 30 and older will have their testosterone levels checked annually. Those who are younger will have the option too. If levels are indeed low, they could pursue testosterone replacement therapy. The guidelines from major medical groups do not recommend this kind of routine screening unless a man has symptoms. Dr. Martin Miner co-directs the Center for Men's Health at Brown University.
I think it's very aggressive, but it depends on how it's implemented. It's a little frightening to me.
His primary concern, the policy could encourage young men to reach for testosterone replacement therapy before trying to correct the underlying drivers, like poor sleep and obesity.
If you just tell men your level is low and we need to optimize it to make you a better fighting machine, to me, that's not really doing them a service.
Especially since taking testosterone does affect fertility. But other experts think it's an entirely reasonable proposal, including Dr. Mohit Khera, a urologist at Baylor College of Medicine.
Men who have low testosterone levels will suffer from decreased energy, decreased muscle mass, some form of depression, and poor mood. Those three in themselves, for someone who's in combat, is a significant disadvantage.
He says checking for low T and bringing it back to a normal range is very different than advocating that it should be boosted to unnatural levels. And there's an ongoing discussion in his field about whether most men should be screened. Khera says it can be a powerful marker of overall health. He acknowledges most men in their 30s will ultimately not screen for low T and require treatment.
However, we are seeing that younger and younger men are having lower and lower testosterone levels. Why? Every decade? Because we're becoming more unhealthy as a general population.
This latest initiative fits into the Trump administration's broader push, spearheaded by figures like Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to promote men's health and expand access to testosterone. Will Stone, NPR News.
This is NPR News.
Coming up on 7:20 on this Thursday morning, later this hour on Morning Edition, social media can make a song go viral, even push it up the charts, seemingly overnight. But there's a dirty little secret. Some influencers are being paid to promote this music. That's in about 15 minutes on Morning Edition from NPR and WNYC.
Support for WNYC comes from J.P. Morgan Chase, serving the people, neighborhoods, and businesses of Greater New York City for over 225 years. More at jpmorganchase.com/NYC. J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC.
From food to rent to the cost of just getting around, in 2026, prices feel like they just keep going up. I'm Sean Carlson, host of All Things Considered on WNYC. Join me Tuesday, July 21st at 7 p.m. for our live series called In Conversation. I'll be joined by people directly affected by the food affordability crisis, including shoppers and grocers, and we'll explore solutions together with you. At the Ben Bookstore in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Learn more at WNYC.org/events.
Alternate side parking and the meters are in effect. We're in the upper 70s with some clouds. We do have an air quality alert once again. Patchy smoke, mostly cloudy, then sunny. A high near 92. Winds pick up, topping 20 miles an hour.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from Schwab, where investors have a range of choices to pursue investing goals, from self-directed investing to full-service wealth management, all in one place. More at schwab.com. EBSCO, committed to providing colleges and universities with relevant online research databases to ensure student, faculty, and staff success. Learn more at ebsco.com. And Odoo, a platform dedicated to being flexible and bringing every part of business together, from CRM to inventory. Learn more about Odoo at odoo.com/NPR.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm A. Martinez.
And I'm Layla Fadil. Good morning. The U.S. Mint is going to make $1 coins with President Trump's face on them. But there are laws that prevent money from depicting living presidents. NPR's Rachel Treisman reports on the administration's workaround.
When Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent unveiled a new $1 collectible coin on Fox News on Tuesday, he said he only had two mandates.
The currency has to say "In God We Trust" somewhere on it.
That's engraved on the coin, according to photos he shared on Wednesday.
And there cannot be a image of a living person.
That's also engraved on the coin, a close-up of President Trump's face. The Thayer Amendment from 1866 prohibits the use of any living person's likeness on U.S. currency. Here's Jeremy Paul, a professor at Northeastern University School of Law.
We don't want neutral symbols like our money to be partisan.
Congress passed a law in 2020 authorizing a new coin for America's 250th birthday, with a design, quote, emblematic of the United States semi-quincentennial. And Bessent argues there's a precedent for featuring the president.
During the 150th, there was a Calvin Coolidge coin, so we can put living people's images on a coin.
But Paul is not convinced. He points to a 2005 law that says a coin can't honor a president until at least 2 years after their death.
Whatever precedent there might be, the law has changed further in the direction of trying to depoliticize the currency.
The Department of the Treasury says the coin doesn't violate any laws. It did not respond to NPR's questions about how much the collectible coins will cost or where revenue will go.
Will the government make money off these coins? Yes, it will. That's the whole point.
The coins will go on sale starting this fall. Rachel Treisman, NPR News.
This month, NPR is looking at the effect of Trump administration policies on arts and culture around the country. Here's one. It's getting harder to see international artists perform in the U.S. Some are being turned away at the airport. Others aren't even trying to come. Josie Fischels reports.
Palestinian comedian, playwright, and actor Alaa Shahadi had come to the United States twice before to perform his one-man show, a coming-of-age story.
To us, this horse is much more. It's not just a symbol of freedom. To us, this horse is a symbol of our resistance, our vitality.
He had a visa that allowed him to work and live in the U.S. for 3 years. When he landed at New York's JFK Airport last November, it was for a performance in Massachusetts 2 days later. But then Customs and Border Protection officers pulled him aside.
As soon as they saw my passport, I was sent to another hall.
Shahadi says he was questioned for 5 hours by federal immigration agents. He was handcuffed. Then he was transferred to an immigration detention facility in New Jersey.
Suddenly I'm in a room like 20 meters square with 30 people sleeping on the concrete, nothing, no blankets. It was a big shock for me.
Despite multiple requests, Customs and Border Protection would not confirm these details to NPR. But they did send an email statement saying that Shahadi was refused entry for, quote, not being forthcoming with facts during his interview with officers. The next morning, he was placed on a return flight to his current residence in Amsterdam. Shahadi was shaken by his experience.
Of course, it is scary to sit with people with power who can just kill your dreams, as simple as that. And you feel how unfair and how humiliating is that, and how you're nothing as a human being.
He decided to cancel his upcoming U.S. tour, 7 cities. Even though most venues showed a filmed version of his show, the canceled tour cost him and the venues that had booked him tens of thousands in lost revenue. Matthew Covey with legal nonprofit Thomasdot says many international artists aren't willing to even attempt a U.S. tour right now. For some, there's the fear of being stopped and turned around at the airport. But it's also become a lot more expensive.
All those fees have gone up significantly.
Currently, it's taking over a year to process artist visa petitions, which are for individuals. But you can't apply more than a year in advance. That's why all artists must pay for faster processing, a fee that just increased to nearly $3,000. Why is visa processing so delayed right now? Petitions are now being reviewed more closely, and more documentation is required, often hundreds of pages.
The current situation is a tour that would have been marginal and maybe break even 5 years ago is a losing money project now.
That's true for Swedish folk group Kongoro. Their second U.S. tour was set and they had paid the extra fees. But then singer Emma Björling ran into trouble in the next step of the process, the interview. A new Trump policy stipulates that visa applicants must be interviewed in person in their own country of residence. You used to be able to go to any U.S. consulate in any country. Since Björling was in Canada with another band, she needed to finish her tour, fly back to Sweden for her interview, then wait.
I was stuck back home without a visa.
She missed the first week of Kongoro's U.S. tour.
With all the additional fees and costs and troubles and stress. It's not worth it, not financially and not stress-wise and workload-wise.
The group lost money on tour and won't return to the U.S. this year. It's not just artists who are feeling the effects. For presenting venues, especially those in smaller cities, cancellations mean lost revenue and lost trust. Jamila Daria is the executive director of the University of Massachusetts Amherst Fine Arts Center.
You not only lose the revenue from the patron who bought the ticket, but for that next show that patron was thinking about going to, now they're second guessing, like, well, who knows if the show's going to happen, so maybe I better not buy.
Her organization had spent nearly a year planning Alaa Shahadi's visit before it was canceled at the last minute.
In Western Massachusetts, where our communities are more rural, access to the storytelling and the perspective of folks who are coming from parts of the world that you don't have direct engagement with is not only lost for that night, but maybe lost for good.
Venues like hers are already strained by pandemic losses and cuts to federal arts funding. And when cultural exchange disappears, she says, it's the audiences who end up missing out. For NPR, I'm Josie Fischels in Chicago.
This is NPR News.
And this is WNYC in New York. Coming up on 7:30 in news headlines in just a minute. Coming up on the Brian Lehrer Show, this is at 10 o'clock this morning on WNYC. How to join a campaign to discover new insect species in Central Park. That conversation and so much more at 10 o'clock this morning on the Brian Lehrer Show. Upper 70s with some clouds right now. Patchy smoke, mostly cloudy, then sunny. A high near 92 with some strong winds.
WNYC is supported by La Femme, presenting Wendy Wasserstein's An American Daughter, directed by Sarna Lapine, starring Montego Glover, Robert Sean Leonard, and Jean Lichty. Runs July 23rd to September 20th. Tickets at lafemmetheaterproductions.org.
If you believe democracy requires a free press, your station is WNYC, 93.9 FM and AM 820, NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. The U.S. military says it's carried out daytime and nighttime attacks against Iran in the last 24 hours. The stepped-up strikes hit Iranian military sites farther north than in previous days. U.S. Central Command says American forces also struck a ship it says tried to breach the renewed American naval blockade of Iranian ports. Iran responded by launching drones and missiles at Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan. Nearly half of House Democrats voted yesterday to cut off U.S. aid to Israel. It wasn't enough to pass, but NPR's Barbara Sprunt says it reflects a major political shift for the party.
The proposed amendment to a State Department funding bill would have removed over $3 billion in funding to Israel. It ultimately failed. The measure was introduced by Republican Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who has long advocated for a more isolationist posture when it comes to foreign policy. The issue divided Democratic leaders, who typically vote in lockstep. The number 2 Democrat in the House, Catherine Clark, voted to remove the funding for Israel. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries called it overly broad and said it would also restrict the United States' ability to confront Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terrorist organizations in the region. Barbara Sprunt, NPR News.
Sunday's Men's World Cup final will feature Spain against Argentina. This is NPR News from Washington.
On WNYC in New York, upper 70s with some clouds at 7:32. Good morning, I'm Michael Hill. The number of cooling towers testing positive for Legionella bacteria on the Upper East Side has grown to 76. WNYC's Caroline Lewis reports.
The towers were tested as part of the City Health Department's investigation into an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease. The severe form of pneumonia has sickened more than 60 people so far. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Guggenheim, and multiple private schools are among the buildings with towers that tested positive. City health officials say going inside the buildings doesn't put people at higher risk, and more testing is needed to figure out which cooling tower caused the outbreak. Building owners are being ordered to disinfect any towers that tested positive.
A spokesperson for the Guggenheim says the museum followed all cooling tower regulations. The Met has yet to respond to a request for comment. A heat wave is scorching the region, but people still have to go to work. WNYC's Michael Saul Warren reports in New Jersey a proposal for strict job site heat protections is languishing.
State Senator Joe Cryan has pushed a bill for years that would create new rules, including mandating access to cold water, shade, and staffing levels when temperatures soar. But the measure has struggled to gain traction with other lawmakers in Trenton. Cryan says this month's brutal heat should be a wake-up call.
We need to react. We know the climate change is real. We know what we're dealing with in terms of impact to workers is very, very real.
Business groups oppose the bill, saying it's too broad and would be burdensome for employers.
Air quality in New York City and the region veered into what health officials consider unhealthy yesterday. That's according to federal agencies. You might be smelling the smoke out there as Canadian wildfires affect this region. City health officials recommend limiting time outside and avoiding strenuous activities. You can also reduce the risk of amount of fine particles you inhale with a well-fitting N95 or KN95 mask available at libraries, Grand Central, and New York Penn Station, and other public places. A disabled tractor-trailer on the Cross Bronx Expressway near Weeks Avenue slowing down northbound traffic. NJ Transit's Raritan Valley line has 15-minute delays both ways between High Bridge and Lebanon. Alternate side parking and the meters are in effect. Upper 70s with some clouds right now. Another air quality alert day. Patchy smoke. Mostly cloudy, then sunny. A high near 92. Those winds pick up. Gusts topping 20 miles an hour.
Support for NPR comes from WNYC members and from Vanguard. With Vanguard Investor Choice, investors can have a voice in how their eligible Vanguard funds vote on key shareholder matters. Learn more at Vanguard.com/investorchoice. And Ooma, now offering MyPhone, a modern home phone service for families who want a screen-free experience with parental controls like Trusted Circle and Quiet Hours. More at myphone.com.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm A. Martinez in Los Angeles, California.
And I'm Leila Fadel in Washington, D.C. Good morning. The new chairman of the Federal Reserve took questions from lawmakers this week for the first time since taking over the central bank. The topics included artificial intelligence, immigration, and inflation. Kevin Warsh said the Fed is determined to bring rising prices under control. NPR's Scott Horsley was watching the testimony, so you didn't have to, and he joins me now to discuss. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Leila.
So what did Warsh say about inflation and the big swings we've seen in energy prices?
Yeah, there have been some big swings. Gas prices jumped sharply just as Warsh was sworn in as Fed chair back in May as a result of the U.S. war with Iran. That pushed annual inflation to its highest level in more than 3 years. Then we had the ceasefire and gasoline prices fell. And, of course, now that ceasefire has unraveled and gas prices are climbing again. They jumped another nickel a gallon just overnight. Warsh told senators there's not a lot he and his Fed colleagues can do about any individual price, but if they do their jobs right, Warsh says, overall inflation will come down.
When prices go up, I know it hits your constituents every day. I'm not trying to sound dismissive of it, but I also don't want to say that there's much that we can do about cattle prices or milk prices today. But there's a lot we can do to make sure that the entire grocery aisle doesn't have higher prices, and that's what we're committed to do.
Warsh has been deliberately vague about what he wants to do with interest rates, but his tough talk on inflation sounds like someone who wants to keep rates relatively high for now, and that's what investors are betting Warsh and his colleagues will do when they meet in a couple of weeks.
Now, artificial intelligence is driving a lot of spending. How is Warsh reacting to it?
Yeah, big tech companies are investing huge sums of money in AI, and that has the potential to affect two things the Fed watches very carefully, inflation and the job market. Right now, for example, computer chip prices are going up because of all the data centers, but we're also seeing a lot of construction jobs. Warsh says over time, the impact of AI could be different.
In the near term, I think this investment is probably quite good for jobs as we're building out the infrastructure. And over the long term, my best guess is that this will improve American productivity. But between the short term and the long term, it can have a disruptive effect, and we're attuned to that.
Warsh has appointed a task force to explore how AI might affect the Fed's work, and he's expecting recommendations by the end of this year.
Warsh also got some questions about immigration. What did he say?
You know, like his predecessor, Jay Powell, Warsh tries to stay in his lane, and he stressed that immigration policy is up to Congress and the White House, not the Federal Reserve. But the questions he got do highlight some of the divisions within the Republican Party. GOP Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina warned the administration's aggressive crackdown on immigration, both legal and illegal, could leave the U.S. with a real shortage of workers.
People are high-fiving and talking about net zero immigration growth as if it's a good thing. It's only a good thing if you want to repeat the mistakes of Western Europe, Japan, China, and other nations that didn't get their replacement rate right.
Another Republican senator, Bernie Moreno of Ohio, took the opposite tack. He says a rebound in immigration would make the Fed's job harder.
If you have dramatically more humans in the United States looking for work, by definition, it makes full employment more difficult.
Now, Warsh was careful not to get dragged into that debate, but clearly immigration policy can make a big difference in the size of the U.S. workforce and the potential for economic growth.
NPR's Scott Horsley, thanks for that rundown, Scott.
You're welcome.
Those rising oil and natural gas prices are not just affecting inflation. They also mean more profits for oil companies. Top global oil producers have been making tens of billions of dollars in profits since the beginning of the war with Iran in late February. Some U.S. lawmakers have a plan for that. Here's NPR's Julia Simon.
I'm here at the gas station right now, and if you, like many Americans, fill up your car with gas, you know very well that the price has jumped up in recent months. But what hasn't jumped up so much is the price of actually drilling for the oil and making this gas. So where does this leave us? Gasoline doesn't cost that much more to make, but because global oil prices have risen at one point to over $120 per barrel, many oil companies are making more money, and that's led to excess profits, or windfall profits. This Democratic senator wants the U.S. to tax them.
Sheldon Whitehouse, senator from the state of Rhode Island.
Here's how Whitehouse says it would work. You look at the average price of a barrel of oil before the war, you compare that to the price spikes today, and then you look at the excess profits.
And then you split the difference. We're actually somewhat generous about letting him keep half of the excess profits, but we want at least half of it to go back.
Whitehouse says the federal government would send the money to lower-income Americans through tax rebates. This windfall tax proposal isn't new. Whitehouse introduced a bill proposing a windfall tax in 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He introduced another version this year. Neither proposal went anywhere, but a similar tax has become law across the pond.
That's what happened in the UK.
Here's Dominic Eagleton with the environmental nonprofit Global Witness. He says after Russia invaded Ukraine,
the UK government introduced a windfall tax on the oil industry's profits, which were, kind of reaching astronomical levels.
The oil industry made more than $900 billion in profits following Russia's invasion, according to researchers at UMass Amherst. Eagleton says the UK's windfall oil tax has brought in more than $12 billion through 2025, the most recent year for which they have data. The European Union also had a temporary windfall oil tax following Russia's invasion, and some European countries want one again. U.S. oil producers aren't a fan of this tax proposal.
We are the world's largest oil producer, the world's largest natural gas producer.
This is Dustin Meyer, Senior Vice President with the American Petroleum Institute, or API, a trade organization for the U.S. oil and gas industry. He says America has become a global energy leader.
But a big part of that secret sauce was having the sort of investment and certainty to bring us to that position. Proposals like this only erode that certainty and send exactly the wrong message at exactly the wrong time.
Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Shell did not respond to requests for comment about the proposed tax. BP referred NPR to API. White House's office says that this bill is targeted to impact only the biggest oil producers and would leave about 70% of U.S. oil production untouched. About a dozen senators have signed on to White House's bill, all of them Democrats, along with independent Bernie Sanders. White House says that it's going to be an uphill struggle. Ultimately, he wants to spotlight big oil profits and this.
Wind, solar, and battery power, they're not raising their prices.
The war has highlighted how these renewable energy sources have gotten cheaper. Julia Simon, NPR News.
This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from Raymond James, where wealth management, banking, and capital market strategies start with connections between people. Raymond James, the power of personal. Disclosures at raymondjames.com. And Subaru. The 2026 Subaru Outback features new styling, as well as standard symmetrical all-wheel drive and EyeSight driver assist technology. Learn more at subaru.com/outback.
It is 7:44, and you're listening to Morning Edition on WNYC in New York. Coming up on the Brian Lehrer Show this morning, ICE's immigration crackdown draws extra scrutiny after more deadly shootings at traffic stops. That conversation and so much more on this morning's Brian Lehrer Show at 10 on WNYC. Time now for John Schaefer's Thursday Gig Alert.
MFA is a Brooklyn band that draws on the sounds of Nigerian Afrobeat and American funk. Since 2009, the group has played horn-forward dance music, or at least they did until 2016, when they decided to call it a day. But one of their songs, called Sunspat, had begun to pick up steam online all by itself, eventually racking up millions of plays and basically forcing MFA to reform. So now they're back with a new album, which includes songs like this one called The Dirt. That's MFA with The Dirt. They play tomorrow night at the Rockaway Hotel. But you don't need to wait that long to hear them live. They're today's edition of Soundcheck, our twice-weekly podcast. Available at newsounds.org or wherever you get podcasts.
We are at 73 degrees in Croton-on-Hudson, Coscob, Connecticut, and Cranford, New Jersey, all with air quality alerts, just like in the city. Upper 70s with partly sunny skies right now. Patchy smoke today, mostly cloudy, then sunny. A high near 92. Those winds pick up and the gusts